Of course, bro. So to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? In other words, what were you struggling with before coaching, and where were you at mentally? Like, let's just start there.
Yeah. So I think the best description I can give of myself at the time, especially before we had started working together, was somebody who knew and still knows where they want to go and where they're trying to get to. I think a lot of the struggles or the pain points that I was dealing with were, when it came to executing um, on, the direction
Mm,
and like the optimal direction. I think the and sort of the inaction led to a lot of internal frustration externally as well.
mhm.
um, so I think that to me, before, especially before we started working together, was where I was at. I knew the destination, and I knew sort of the best, like the way that I wanted to operate, and so I was able to reference that to know what I wasn't doing, what it was that I
Right.
wanted to be doing. So yeah, I think that's pretty much internally where I was at prior
Yeah, yeah.
to us starting to work together.
Okay, cool. And um, can you tell us what goals was it that you were trying to achieve at the time?
Yeah, so I'm a recording artist. Music is what I do. So um, a lot of my a lot of the way that I wanted to operate was process over specific, like a tangible result in terms of having X amount of whatever the goal would have been.
Mhm.
So I think it was part of what I wanted to do was start to establish like the proper routines, proper habits to move. What I think I was doing was understanding that, okay, let me attempt to detach from some of the results. Prior to us working together, I thought that that's what I was doing, right? But upon us actually working together and sort of uncovering some of the things that I was doing, and some of the habits that I was using, and some of the ways that I was approaching the work, I knew again like where I wanted to go in terms of trusting the process over specific results. But I think I didn't have the tools or the framework yet to actually properly execute that way of living. I was
Right, right.
still I was still focused on, even though I was telling myself I wasn't focused on results, the way that I was actually um, carrying myself on a day to day was still catered to, more number driven or um, results specific, as opposed to what I was telling myself was what I was trying to do, which was be a little bit more process driven,
Right.
right? So the goal specifically, I would say um, prior to working with you, and which is how I measured the success of the time working together, was being a lot more active in terms of the pursuit, but also in terms of the output and making the process visible.
And just
And
and just
go ahead.
sorry to interject, just 'cause, people aren't may not be sure. For you, you were specifically trying to increase the amount of the output and the number of projects that you were sharing with the world, correct? Like you
Yeah,
wanted to get more out so that you could help elevate your music career and like you said, start executing that plan that you had for yourself. Is that
yeah,
fair to say?
yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you then, you know, what was the main thing holding you back from making the progress that you wanted to make when you decided to join the program?
So I think before starting to work with you, probably the biggest thing that I was dealing with um, was a hyper focus on selecting the optimal path, as
Mm,
opposed to just making progress,
mm,
And
mm,
so, yeah, and so I thought and felt that way about, what I was doing for certain reasons, again, that we were able to sort of uncover, and, through the work that we were doing, I was sort of challenged to accept and, you know, try to see new perspectives as to why are you thinking about this a certain way?
Right.
Um, and so yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge was knowing where I wanted to go, having an idea of the potential paths to get there,
Right.
but having difficulty selecting the path and or sticking to the specific path as opposed to shifting between, okay, this is working for the time being, but is there a better way that I can be doing this right now? Maybe let me try this instead,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
switching between multiple lanes pretty much.
What you were struggling with, it sounds like, was really prioritizing progress over perfection, and also being able to trust yourself with the decisions that you make and sticking to
Mhm.
the plan once you started on that path. Um, is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let me then ask you, bro, how was this, like, how was that lack of self-trust and that pri prioritization of perfection over the
Mhm.
progress, how is that impacting your confidence, your clarity, and your ability to just execute?
It did cause a lot of frustration
Mm,
because, again, specifically, I knew where it was that I wanted to get to, and I almost knew how I wanted to operate. And so, given those two things, it would follow, at least to me, that okay, well, if you know where you want to go and you know how you want to get there, it should follow that you should be able to do the things to get there, right? So the frustration was coming from, how do I know exactly where I want to go? How do I know how I want to live? But I'm still having difficulty, selecting for exactly how to do that, you know?
mhm, mhm.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of um, trusting myself and trusting the work, yeah, there was a lot of inaction, and that sort of spurred a loss in momentum in certain places. And
Right,
then, the biggest thing that one of the biggest struggles that I was dealing with was keeping trying to regain the momentum, or like start getting the ball going again.
right, right,
When I would again choose a different path, or diverge from the original quote unquote plan that I had. Um, so yeah, I think I was impacted mostly with inaction, and then sort of the frustration that build or that built, internally, and then again externally, in terms of how I was actually approaching what I was doing.
how would you say that that problem was impacting your daily life?
Yeah, so I think the way that I viewed the world, and I still do, um, I definitely am not somebody who likes to put the responsibility to get to where I get to get to where I need to get to on anybody else. So it was a lot of, I don't know if blame is necessarily the right word, but a lot of um, a desire for self accountability, right?
Mm,
And so a lot of me thinking that, okay, this is my fault. I should be able to figure out the way to the way to get out of this, or the way to improve the situation.
mm,
Um, and so I think, initially there was a little bit of reluctance, because especially to start working with somebody else, because the way that I viewed things was, I'm able to, I know I'm able to get myself in a better position. So let me figure out how to do it. Right.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so I think sort of the impact that was having in terms of it being ready and willing to accept help was preventing me from seeing that could have been a viable or even a helpful option.
tell me a little bit about that. What at the time, what were your biggest hesitations or concerns about receiving help or joining the program?
Yeah, I think there was a question of, value for time. Like, am I going to be receiving, um, an acceptable amount of value from spending my time, right? And you spending your time working working together on some of the pain points and sort of fleshing out, the best way to start to execute and start to get the momentum back.
Hmm.
Um, Again, because the way I was framing it internally was, I'm capable of rationalizing where it is that I'm trying to get to. So I should be fully capable of rationalizing the execution and the plan,
Right. Right.
right? So that was like my logic. And so I'm thinking, okay, what is somebody else going to be able to provide me in terms of thinking about the thing that I think about all the time, right? What can somebody tell me about myself more than I know, right? That's what
Mm.
the sort of the way that I was thinking about it.
Right.
I'm like, what is anybody going to be able to coach me on, or what is anybody going to be able to guide me through, or and so I think, again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself with the answer, but I think I said, okay, let me allow myself to spend some time, and it's, if I want to get to where I want to get to, this is an opportunity to invest. It's and it's an opportunity to explore, right?
Right.
I was prepared to, after a session or two, say, okay, this may not be for me. Like, I knew that was a possibility,
Right.
um, but I think the assistance that I was getting it wasn't necessarily um, an attempt by you to guide, but it was an exploration, which to
Mm.
me, as soon as I sort of saw it as that, I understood immediately the value that I was getting, because
Mm.
I'm like, oh, okay, this is not, yeah, nobody can tell me more than myself where I need to go or how I need to execute, but somebody can tell me where I am looking, that's that may be incorrect. Like, hey, I know you're looking here. I know you're looking
Right.
in this direction, and you
Right.
think that that's the right direction you to be looking at. But I'm listening to you tell me something, and I'm telling you, why don't you take a look over here for a second, right?
Hmm.
Just you can look over here. Like, what's underneath this stone that you haven't turned yet. And again, when you're in a space where you are, rationalizing to yourself and spending time speaking to yourself and thinking that you can execute and develop the plan on your own without any sort of sounding board, it's easy to get trapped in some sort of feedback loop that may not be aiding you exactly how you need to be helped,
Right. Right.
So upon our, first or second session, immediately after leaving with some of the things that we spoke about, some of the plans that we had implemented, some of the ideas and tools that we had implemented, I was like, oh wow, there's actually, I'm actually being challenged in a way that's forcing me to have to progress in a way that I wasn't before. As in, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
something that I thought I was doing, and then when we started working together, I was like, oh, I was doing it, but I may not have been doing it the most effectively.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think just to maybe provide some like the language to kind of what you're describing is I think you just gave a perfect real life example of the value of having a coach be able to make you aware of your blind spots. That's essentially, I think what you're describing is the fact that you came into it maybe thinking how are you going to tell me how to live, what choices I need to make, or how to do X, Y, or Z? And it sounds like you discovered very quickly that that's not it at all. In fact, my job a lot of the time, I would say a vast majority of the time, is really to be a sounding board to you so that you can explore some of those blind spots that you're not able to see yourself. It's almost like if you're trying to find something on your back, it doesn't matter how often you do it. If you don't have a mirror to be able to actually see, you're not going to be able to see it, right? And I think
Hmm.
I think you spoke perfectly to what the role of an effective coach is to really challenge the client and just like you said, get them to look in certain areas or consider certain things that maybe they're just not able to access themselves because they simply don't have the tools. They don't have the mirror, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think you touched on that. I think you spoke on that perfectly. What were the biggest mindset shifts or breakthroughs that you've experienced from our coaching?
I think one of the biggest mindset shifts or framework shifts was understanding that just like everybody else, we have, or I had different parts of me that I'm able to tap into and also need to tap into given the whatever the environment is
Mm,
requiring from me.
right.
I think I was approaching most of the things that I was doing with a singular attitude or disposition in terms
Mhm,
of how I was thinking, okay, this is the optimal way for me to be operating
mm,
in this space. And I think what we were able to do was uncover that I actually did have a desire to operate a little bit more freely, right? I did have a desire to not be so rational and logical in the decisions that I was making. I
mm,
did have that desire, but it was I was masking it, either masking it or letting it come out in maybe not the most optimal ways, right?
right, right.
And so understanding that, okay, look, you have this part of you that you can use to tap into, and you have the other part that the more rational, um, less perfectionist side of yourself, or the more rational, more perfection side, and then you have the other side that's a little bit less perfection, more emotive, more willing to move off the way that you're feeling.
Mhm,
Let's take those two and understand that you're you're diminishing or minimizing one of them, because in the way that I'm viewing the world was the more rational side is the optimal way. I think upon us having conversations after me doing some of the things that I plan to do, and sort of recognizing how I was operating during those times, made me realize that, okay, it actually may not be optimal to be approaching everything with one specific mentality, right? So the two, three, four different ways that we all are able to exist, right? It may be better for me to, instead of approaching everything with one mentality, to accept whatever the natural mentality that I operate in that space. It may be actually more beneficial to, hey, don't when you're feeling that way, don't put it to the side. Just embrace it and move forward using that
mhm.
mentality, and sort of over time I begin to implement the ability to recognize when I was having a tendency to revert back to what I thought was, again, what I thought prior to us working together was the best way to move.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah. So I think another thing that I was able to start to discover, and that I gained from some of the work that we did, was shifting the amount of value that I'd expect to get from asking for assistance, for asking for help. That's
Mm,
another thing that I was, willing to sort of channel.
which is huge, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that just came from, just starting to see the immense amount of value in, the work that we were actually doing.
Mhm,
And then sort of recognizing, okay, well, this, this spawned from me stepping outside of my comfort zone and recognizing that there may be something in actually using other people as a sounding board, right? And or actually understanding that I can work with somebody. It's not asking for help isn't like a parasitic thing. It's a relationship.
collaborative.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
collaborative, exactly.
Rather than dependent. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
absolutely. And that's a big thing, I think, as and I told you from when we started working together, we the goal is always to get the client to a place where I don't want you to, like, we're not even working together right now, and you're doing really great, which is what I want for all of my clients. I don't want any of them to be dependent on me long term. The whole idea is for us to come together, collaborate at the time that they need it, and empower them with the tools to be able to apply the things that we've learned together, in the future endeavors and the future goals and that sort of thing, right? um so let me ask you then, how has your, how would you say that your clarity, your decision making, and your execution have improved? If you could give, maybe some tangible examples of how those things have improved.
Yeah, so I think if we go, I can go very specific, and we can go from there. I think initially, some of the issues I had, I know, the goal, just to reiterate, was wanting to have a much higher output as an artist than I was having, put out more projects,
Hmm.
right? And I think, in the process of trying to sort of figure things out, like for myself, without, before we had started to work together, there was, certain patterns or habits that I fell on that weren't optimal, and I was trying to be optimal, but I was selecting for the wrong things, right? Specifically trying to control for everything that I in reality didn't really have control over. And so that was sort of blocking some of the willingness to just move forward. So I think during the time that we worked, and then afterwards, now where I'm at, there's a lot less, I'm a lot more comfortable relinquishing the things that I don't have control over,
Mm.
and understanding that there's an immense amount of power in the things that I do have control over, and just allow myself to operate the way that we did in terms of, um, developing the plan, sticking to it, understanding that the results may not be exactly what I want, but the results in terms of actually going through with the plan is exactly what I need to do, right? So, again, tangibly, just being able to put things out way more frequently than I was before.
And could
Um,
you, sorry to interject, Nick, and could you give just an idea of maybe how many projects, like how the frequency, how much the
yeah,
frequency has changed in which you're being able to release these projects since we started working together?
yeah. So when we started working together, I think I had two or three, two or three projects out at the time. Um, and even again, it just show how much of a process it is. I mean, even in the work, I think I had set a record or a goal that I didn't hit in terms of the specific number, but in terms of the progress, there was an immense amount of progress compared to where I was prior to setting the goal, right? But I think I had maybe two or three projects out.
And
I
the
think
span
in
of
our
how long? That
in a
was,
span of maybe like 2 to 3 years,
yeah.
which is just to showcase
Yeah.
how sparse that was, the output was. So in the year that we were working, the plan was to release, I think, at least once a month. It would have been maybe 10, 11 like pieces
Hmm.
releasing. I ended up putting out 8, right?
Hmm.
So it wasn't the goal, which was again I think 11 or 12, but I was still able to sort of, get out of my way and actually get to the space where, okay, well, looking back, it may not have felt like I was doing much, but then looking back and being able to give myself a little bit of credit, like, oh, okay, well, like we actually did make progress, right? We actually did see that before. I mean, 2, 3 projects over a 3-year span, right? That's once every year and a half, and then wanting to actually put out more projects in a 12-month, maybe less than that actually, but
Yeah, I think
let's
it
say
was,
like
yeah, about
maybe
10
like
months, I think.
10-month span, actually putting out 8 projects. It may not have been the exact frequency. That's just me being a little bit harsh on myself, but, um, clearly, okay, well, there's something here that I was able to actually tap into, and then okay, let's start proceed from that, and keep doing momentum going there.
Yeah, yeah. And just to reiterate, essentially you collapsed the time from you releasing projects to about a year and a half for those initial 2 to 3 projects that you had prior to working together, to now over that 10 months, let's be generous and say it was about a month and a half or a little over a month. So
Hmm.
you collapsed the frequency by quite a bit once you were able to get some of that clarity and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, that's amazing stuff, bro. Okay, we're almost done here, man. So let me ask you, who would you recommend this coaching program to and why? Like, what kind of person do you think would benefit most from from this type of experience?
Yeah, I think funnily enough, most people that would benefit may have some of the similar reluctance that I had
Right.
initially. But I think anybody that is in a position where they know they know where they want to go, they know where they want to be, and they understand intuitively that they're not optimizing to get there the right way, or they think they understand how to get there, but for whatever reason, they're having some sort of paralysis in that choice, right?
Right.
Or in selecting the actual direction, because that's what I part of what I was dealing with.
Hmm.
And I know from just, intimate conversations with people that I'm close with, I know that that's a pretty common, occurrence. Like we know that there's something calling us, right? But sometimes there's a challenge in receiving the call, and the challenge in actually, okay, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but how do I go about doing it, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, man. No, for sure. Okay. And last question for you. Let me ask, for the people, like you said, a lot of people probably are feeling that hesitancy. Maybe thought about coaching, maybe they haven't thought about it, and they'll hear this video and be like, damn, you know what, maybe this is something I should consider. What would you say to someone who may be scared or hesitant to invest, and isn't sure coaching is a fit? What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, I think again, the reality is you're making an investment in yourself, but the other reality, or not the other, but part of that reality is it may not be for you. But if you are somebody who wants to extract the best out of yourself, you are more than likely willing to engage in any channel, any endeavor that could give you some sort of edge,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
so and so, because for me coming to work with you, yeah, there was maybe some reluctance or hesitancy, probably because it's another person, but I that doesn't mean that I hadn't been searching for similar avenues prior to us working together, and maybe even investing my own money in other areas, maybe
Hmm.
not specifically with the person, but maybe books. I've been reading a lot, and so I didn't really think twice about spending the time once I initially had gone through some of the conversation and understood where the value was lying. So I
Hmm.
think I think yeah, if you are somebody who, again, as I described earlier, knows where they want to go, having trouble getting there, or figuring out the best way to move forward, I think that exploring the option of a coach is something that you should give yourself the grace to do. And again, understand it may not be for you, but the world, or the potential that you can tap into, if it is for you, probably outweighs whatever whatever
Perceive.
the cost. Yeah, whatever the cost may be for the short term.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, bro. Awesome, man. So well, first of all, thank you for your time, bro. I really appreciate you, sharing your experience with the people. I'm sure, the right people will see this, and hopefully, take the next action that they need to take to
Mhm.
get on their path. Neal, where can the people find you, man? If someone wants to check out some of your music or follow you on socials, you said you're an up and coming artist, of course, putting out
Yeah.
music regularly now. Where
Mhm.
can where can the people find you?
Yeah, my Instagram, all my handles on social media are the same. It's just my name, Neal, Nealgnon. Um, Spotify, Apple Music, any platform you listen to music, the
All
music that I
platforms.
make, yeah, it's all up there. So, if you wanted to check it out, yeah, you can do that. And social media is the same.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, anyone who made it this far, thank you for listening. And if you'd like to explore how I can help you, and how we can help you at Insight Terra Coaching, go to insightterra.com and you can schedule your clarity call. And we can, hop on a call, figure out some next steps to get you on the path that you're trying to go. So thank you for listening. And Neal, thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you for your time too.
Of course, bro. Sheesh, that was funny.
You got some